What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Off the Couch Boxing. I'm your host, Reckless Rex Ruger. That's the Alexis Arguello puppet.
And I'm your other host, Frank Benji's, and we're back with another one.
Yes, we are. A little different spin tonight, man. Not an in-ring competitor, but just got to get her camera up there. Trish, you there?
If you tap at the bottom of the screen, you'll see the microphone in that.
There she is. Hi, Trish. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you? Can you see me okay?
Well, we just lost your camera.
Oh.
Could just be choppy. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good to have you. It's good to have you. Wait, it keeps going off. There we go. There we go. So, yeah, why does it keep going off, Benji's? You're the technical advisor here.
Yeah, it keeps going off.
I technically know nothing.
At the bottom of the screen, there's a camera icon down there.
Well, she's obviously got that enabled because it's showing up at times.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Shall I log back in again?
Yeah, absolutely.
You can try that. Yeah.
Yeah, that worked the last time. Yeah, that absolutely worked the last time. And again, we always love the fans to see our technical issues, man. We don't edit anything here because we don't know how and we don't give a shit to. It's all happening live.
I'm the technical advisor, and I technically know nothing.
You are the technical advisor, and you technically know nothing. That is true. He's the technical advisor, and he technically knows nothing. So, so far, so good.
Okay, yes. I won't touch anything.
Good. Trish, it's good to have you on here. I'm glad we finally got a chance to do this. I'm excited. I'm excited that the I Am Tommy Morrison documentary is about to happen.
Yes, it is. You know what? Can you see me okay now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I wonder if when I turn it round horizontal, that's when it kicks me off.
Yeah, that seems to be good right there. Yeah, that seems to be good. So I'm curious to know, like, what was the impetus for this documentary? Like, why now a Tommy Morrison documentary? Who approaches you about it?
Okay, well, it was always something that Tommy wanted to do himself. So we had spoken about it for years, and he already had a plan, the beginning and the middle and the end, and he knew who he wanted in his real documentary. And one day we went to see The Fighter, the Mickey Ward movie.
Great
and
movie.
We went, yeah, really good. We went there for his birthday, for Tommy's birthday. And we came out and it was raining, and Tommy said, yeah, that was a good movie about Mickey, but my story is better. And so I looked at him, and this was back in 2011, and I looked at him and I said, but your story is not over yet. And he said, yeah, you're right. But he said, promise me when we get to do my story that it will tell the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the whole truth. And I said, okay. And so it's now time to do Tommy's documentary. So many people have tried to do it, and so many YouTubers have got their own little documentaries out there about my husband.
Right.
And ESPN brought out their documentary about my husband. And now it's time for Tommy to bring out his own documentary about his own life.
And what is your relationship currently like with his two sons, Kenzie and Trey?
Okay, Kenzie and I, we message each other all the time. Yes. So Tommy's son, Kenzie, has always been there for his father. And through thick and thin, he has just been there for him. And he's been there for me too since Tommy's passing.
Okay.
So I'm curious to know, back, a long time ago, Tommy was in a great movie that we all know. And I'm just curious how that whole thing came about. Like, how was he picked to be in this movie? How did all that play out?
Okay, the movie, are you talking about Rocky V?
Which was panned by critics a little bit, but I will say that I rally around that movie. I love that movie, and I defend that movie, and I like the fact that it didn't end with a typical Rocky fight and ended with a street fight. I thought they got a lot of things right in that movie, and Tommy was fantastic in it for having no acting background.
That's right. I mean, Mark, it is one of the most talked about Rocky movies out there. You either hate it or you love it, right?
Yeah.
But, okay, but what do people go and see when they go to Philadelphia? They go up to the steps, right?
Yep.
And the statue. Well, who was there with the steps and the statue? It was Tommy Gunn, right?
Yep.
Where else do they go? They go to where the street fight was, right? Well, who was there? It was Tommy Gunn. So I think you'll find that people are now considering Rocky V like a fine wine. You know, the older it gets, the more realistic it is, the better it is to people. And quite honestly, when you look at Rocky V and you look at Tommy's life, it's the same.
Yeah.
You know, you've got the Don Kings, the Dukes, you've got the managers, you've got the promoters, you've got all the fame and fortune, and then you've got nothing. So it is a realistic movie. I think it's the best Rocky movie out there. And that's because that's the only one I've seen. Okay.
Yeah.
And I never saw it. I never saw it, Mark, when Tommy was alive. I never saw him in Rocky V. And I've said it in other podcasts that I didn't even know who Sly was or Sylvester Stallone. And Tommy would laugh all the time because during the day he would come out with some kind of a sentence, and he'd look at me and he'd go, "You remember that from the movie, right?" And I'd look at him and go, "No, Tommy, I've never seen that." And then in the end, I had to watch it for the first time. This was about 3 years after Tommy had died, and I had to watch it because I had to do a podcast on it. And all the things that he was telling me as we were driving along, and I was in the kitchen, he would come out with all these lines. I suddenly realized, you know, these were lines from Rocky V. Yeah.
Now, I have to ask, only just because, you know, you've done podcasts before, you know, the stories are out there, but there might be people that are tuning in for the first time and reading the tagline on this, that you are Tommy's, you know, Tommy's widow, you know, so they might be looking for answers in this episode. Clear up any of the misconceptions of that there are out there about Tommy. So much was made throughout his life about he had HIV, he didn't have HIV. He had HIV, he didn't have HIV. He disputed the findings. You know, he unfortunately had to bring an end to his career in 1996, which I feel like he was right on the cusp of huge things in 1996. Huge, you know, huge fights are going to be coming his way. A potential showdown with Mike Tyson. All these things were starting to come his way. But you know, but clear up any of the misconceptions there might have been about Tommy, his health, because you know, obviously you were married to him. You seem to be in fantastic health.
Yes, I am. I am in fantastic health. Yes, let me clear it up on this podcast like I've done on several other ones.
Please.
When Tommy died, and you're in the medical business too, right,
yes,
Mark?
I'm a nurse. Yep.
Okay, all right. Are you too, Frank? Are you in the medical?
I was a long-time CNA, but right now I work for the ARC, and I deal with, you know, developmentally disabled folks. So yeah, I'm still in the medical business.
Sure. Okay, sounds good. So what I'm going to tell you probably will make sense. So when Tommy died, I made a deathbed promise to Tommy that I would continue his fight for him, fight to find out exactly what had happened on February 10th, 1996 in Las Vegas, Nevada. And so I began the fight for him. First of all, I had a post-mortem done on Tommy. And I thought, okay, you know, our lives have been pretty private. We haven't been out in the media. But boom, as soon as his death will be announced, that people will go, oh, well, Tommy had HIV in 1996 in Las Vegas. He died of AIDS. And I thought, okay, I want to know the truth. I want to be able to say to people, like I'm saying right now, did Tommy have HIV in 1996? Who diagnosed him with HIV in February of 1996 in Vegas? And then who diagnosed Tommy with AIDS when he died? All right, so I went through a 10-year lawsuit, guys. I went through a 10-year federal lawsuit in Nevada, and I had 4 judges. 3 judges recused themselves. The 4th judge that stayed on the case is actually the same judge that's on that UFC case. I don't know if you're following that in Vegas, with a huge settlement that the judge declined for all the UFC fighters. Are you following that case at all? Okay, so that judge was also on Tommy's case as well. And let me just read you a summary of the 10-year lawsuit.
Sure.
And if you've watched ESPN 30 for 30, this is going to blow your mind.
Okay.
I have affidavits, I have medical records and everything to prove everything that I'm going to tell you. First of all, there was never a ringside meeting that took place on February 10th, 1996 between Mark Ratner, who was the executive commissioner, and Tony Holden, who was the guy that told Tommy he had HIV on February 10th, 1996. There was never a ringside meeting. Mark Ratner, in his records on file, and remember, these are on file and under oath with penalty of perjury if he's lied.
Right.
Mark Ratner says in his legal documents that he never told Tony Holden Tommy had HIV at ringside or at any other time anywhere else. Okay. All the defendants in the case, one was Dr. Margaret Goodman, who is with VADA, Voluntary Anti-Doping Association.
Yep.
The other one is Mark Ratner, Executive Commissioner at the time. The Nevada State Athletic Commission, these are all the defendants in the case. And John Hyatt from Quest Diagnostics and Quest Diagnostics, the lab itself, all 5 defendants named in the lawsuit now do not own a diagnosis of HIV in my husband.
Wow.
Okay. The doctor, Dr. Robert Voy, confirmed Tommy was medically and physically fit to fight and receive a license. And that is also filed in the court of law. The indefinite worldwide suspension on February 10th, 1996, that the whole world got to hear about,
right,
was supposedly never even made, as per Bob Bennett, who was part of the Nevada Commission up until last year. He says under oath in court docket 140 that Tommy was never suspended from boxing worldwide on February 10th, 1996. In the court documents dated July 11th, 2006, Fight Facts, who deal with the suspensions, changed Tommy's suspension to license denied status, right? So they took off the medical suspension,
right,
and they changed it to license denied almost exactly 10 years later in 2006. And the Nevada Commission filed that document. It's not something I've pulled up or created.
Correct.
And then Tommy's license. So if you think about it, okay, nobody diagnosed Tommy with HIV. No physician, no lab, no boxing commission. Nobody diagnosed Tommy with HIV on February 10th, 1996. So why was he kicked out of boxing? All right, so the commission state in one of their documents that Mr. Morrison failed to, let's have a look here. Okay, plaintiff's excerpts have nothing to do with the fact that Mr. Morrison failed to comply with the requirements of NAC 467.027 Section 3 and was not granted a license to box in Nevada, which resulted in the cancellation of February 10th, 1996. This is in court docket 216. Okay. Anybody can pull that up. Yep. And it's the Nevada Commission saying that Tommy violated NAC 467.027 Section 3. And so in the court case, guess what? I approached the legislator and paid for all these documents, this thick,
Wow.
because
A
it's
book.
got the minutes of the meetings.
Yeah.
And guess what? NAC 467.027 Section 3 did not exist on February 10th, 1996.
Wow.
So are we going as far to say on Off the Couch Boxing that this is a conspiracy against
Yes.
Tommy Morrison?
That's what I'm reading here. Yeah.
So, I mean, you can say what you want. I am just providing you with the facts from the court of law.
Don't worry, Trish, I'm saying it.
Yeah, we're saying it. We're saying there's an obvious
Oh,
conspiracy
okay.
going on here.
And then in the 10-year lawsuit, so we've also found out now that the law did not exist that allowed them to kick him out of boxing, right? That Tommy's post-mortem report, authored by experts in the field of virology and microbiology, showed negative results for HIV virus. And the HIV virus, if you are in the medical business, you know it's actually termed as a retrovirus.
Right.
They did a post-mortem and an ante-mortem and found no retrovirus in his system. And we're talking in his system, meaning in his tissues, in his blood, in his saliva, in his sperm, in his cerebral spine fluid. Nowhere in his body whatsoever did they find any retroviruses, which is the scientific term for HIV. And here are the documents that back up and support everything that I just said about no diagnosis being made. In fact, there's one document here, and it's docket 174. It was filed on the 8th of June, 2016, 20 years later, right, by the Nevada Commission. And it says, plaintiff, and I was the plaintiff because I filed the lawsuit,
Right.
now recognizes that neither the state defendants nor the Quest defendants ever diagnosed Mr. Morrison as carrying the HIV virus. Plaintiff additionally agrees with the defendants that Mr. Morrison was never diagnosed with a human immune deficiency virus in Las Vegas in February of 1996.
Wow.
So what we're saying here is rest in peace, Tommy.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
he got cheated out of a career. That's
He
what
did.
happened.
Yeah. Yeah. But why though? But why did he get cheated out of a career? Who wanted him cheated out of a career? That's the big question.
It's an interesting question, and I'm sure you're going to get a lot of answers in Tommy's documentary, I Am Tommy Morrison.
Yeah.
I have Don King is in that documentary. Okay.
Yeah.
And I have the contract that Tommy had signed with Don King. Remember that this fight that he was supposed to fight on February 10th, 1996 was the first fight of a multi-million-dollar contract.
Huge.
That he had signed with Don King to eventually fight Mike Tyson.
Yep.
Right? And Tommy told me personally, and I think he told many people, that he would have beaten Mike Tyson because Mike Tyson had would have recently come out of jail. And Tommy said, and he told me how he would have beaten him, and I will never disclose that, but he did say that he would have beaten Mike Tyson. So, you know, there's one answer there for you. What's really interesting is that the lab report that was finally produced for 1996, February 1996, remember, now nobody says that they ever diagnosed Tommy, was a $23 test. It was not approved by the FDA. The lab report says Dr. Robert Boy on here as being the physician that ordered the test. Dr. Robert Boy said he never ordered that test. and the blood, the so-called blood that they had, was stored in a toxicology freezer, which doesn't make sense because they drew the blood 2 days before. They would never shove it in a freezer for them to test it for HIV. It would have to be unfrozen. And then they say that they reported it to a Dr. Russell. Well, there was not a Dr. Russell licensed to practice medicine in Vegas in 1996.
Wow.
It was never signed off by the pathologist, and by the Code of Federal Regulations, every lab report has to be signed off either electronically or signed off in handwriting
Without a
by
doubt.
the by the pathologist, which authenticates the actual lab report. It had him listed as 99 years old, okay, and just full of incorrect information. And
Wow.
this is what the lab produced during the lawsuit. So what they never produced was the actual testing. Now, again, if you're in the medical business, it's almost like testing a swimming pool for the chemicals.
Right, the
This
pH
is
level. Yeah, right.
exactly. So this test is the actual test. This is the report. There's a difference.
Right.
You need to have the test results. They have never, ever been able to supply any of these test results throughout the whole lawsuit for the so-called 100 tests that ESPN keep reporting that Tommy underwent.
Wow.
Right? And this would be their only proof to show that he had HIV as per their records, okay? And they've never been able to supply any of these test results to support a lab report. And then the judge himself in Vegas, he says, we wouldn't even be having this discussion if the test was specific for the existence of the virus or not. That's obviously why there's even the possibility of a claim the test didn't test for the virus. And that's September 8th, 2016. And that's Honorable Judge Richard F. Boulware II, a federal judge. So that 10-year lawsuit that I was in, that I did by myself, pro se, came up with all this evidence. He was never diagnosed with HIV, and he did not die of AIDS because his post-mortem confirms no retrovirus, no budding retrovirus in his system.
So then, if I may, my mind is blown right now. I can't believe that.
Yeah.
It's absolutely astonishing. So fast forward to, and again, this is something you can definitely speak on because you obviously spent, his last days, months, years with him. So his mother, and I don't know what kind of relationship you have with her, in 2013, August of 2013, goes on and says that he's in the final stages of AIDS. He's passing away from AIDS, and it's September 1st. Obviously, we know that, or it's the beginning of September, he ultimately passes away. She says he's in sepsis, septic shock, organ failure, cardiac arrest. So why does his mother say this?
Bless her heart. She's a little sweet old lady. She was never there to draw blood, to test it. She has no medical background. And she has no proof, there's no evidence that she has brought forward to show that she could actually diagnose Tommy with HIV or AIDS. The media ran with the story, I don't know why she says that. I think everybody has been saying it. You guys were probably saying it until before this podcast. But there's no evidence to support what she said at all.
Yeah. So go ahead, Benji.
No,
you look like you want to say something. There's a lot to digest
absolutely
here.
Flabbergasted, man. I mean, just what she's saying. Like, we've been in the healthcare field. We've seen documents. We've dealt with this. So, for doctors to quote unquote sign off on things and then renege on the signing of things, and then doctors don't even exist.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's just insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you said something pretty vital there, that doctors signed off on things. Actually, no doctor has signed off that he had HIV. No doctor has signed off that he had AIDS.
Yeah.
We have affidavits and postmortems and antemortems that have been signed off by physicians and scientists and pathologists renowned for being in virology and microbiology, that have signed off that Tommy did not have HIV and did not have AIDS.
So ultimately, we did lose Tommy in 2013 at the age of 44. So ultimately, what was his cause of death?
Yeah. The cause of death on the death certificate is cardiac arrest, septic shock, septicemia, and multi-organ failure. 2 days before he died, he was actually put into a medically induced coma.
Mm-hmm.
About a month before he died, he had heart surgery. And about a year before he died, 2011, December 1, 2011, he had to have chest surgery on the right side of his chest. And that's because 3 months before that, he was thrown in jail in Tennessee on what was a bogus felony fugitive warrant of arrest.
Mm-hmm. I remember that. Yep. And then there was some kind of an instance with some type of infected gauze, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Yes.
He was thrown into jail for a month. He was thrown in solitary confinement, and he came out a month later. I bailed him out, and in fact, they dropped the case because it wasn't a federal case. It was an $80 unpaid fine from 2006 from South Dakota. So he shouldn't have had to have gone through all that. When he came out of jail, he had what was an insect bite to the side of his chest. And in fact, I've got, again, when you mentioned, Frank, about doctors signing off, here is a letter signed off by the physician saying, please be advised that Tommy Morrison was seen in my office on September 29th, 2011. He had a large abscess to his right axilla, which was a result of an insect bite, probably a spider, that had occurred a few days prior to his visit on the 29th. It was necessary to drain the abscess at that time. If you require any additional information, please do not hesitate to contact me. And it's signed off by his physician, Dr. Antonio Ossio. And Ossio even did an affidavit in court, again signed under penalty of perjury, everything to do with that spider bite, even his bill, right, and the insurance that we use. And it confirms that he had an issue with his chest. I don't know if you can see because of the glare, but can you see?
We can.
Okay.
Man.
All right. That's the side of his chest that he came out with. And here's me showing with a flat tongue that there's something inside his chest.
Yep.
To the home health lady. And she said, no, there's nothing inside his chest. And I said, yes, there is something inside his chest. These are real photographs, guys. I took photographs every day of his recovery. And there you can see his chest. And I'm going to reenact what happened that day. It was December 8th, 2011. And this is a picture of his chest again. And we had the home health lady come to our home after Tommy underwent surgery on his chest. They pulled out major and minor pec muscle from his chest.
Yep.
And the surgeon had left 12 foot of surgical gauze in Tommy's chest to rot for 8 days. And you see the home health lady pulling out the gauze from Tommy's chest. Okay, and this, I've reenacted this. This is obviously not the gauze that was pulled out at the time.
Right.
But it was covered in blood clots and it smelled really badly. And she kept pulling it out of his chest. He was sitting on a stool in the kitchen, and no painkillers, no anesthetic, no nothing, because we didn't know it was in there, right?
12 feet.
The home health lady said, "Oh no, I just got to change a 4x4 bandage," right? And I said, "Okay, that's great." And it wasn't until she pulled off the bandage that I had seen a little piece of thread in there.
Yep.
And then that's when she pulled all this out. She nearly passed out on the sofa. A friend of Tommy's had to help Tommy. And Tommy, being as tough as he is, you never saw him cry in the ring, but he cried when they pulled this out.
Good Lord, I guess no. I certainly would.
I called the surgeon immediately as this was happening. And I said, "What have you done? You've just left all these surgical gauze in my husband's chest." And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry." And yes, I did file with the medical advisory board, and they lost the paperwork.
Of course.
I had to file it again, and when I filed it, they said, "You're out of time."
Wow. Well, that's the medical community, and the people in high places doing everything they can to sweep things under the rug, I'm sure.
Well, when you're a celebrity, you don't always have good stuff happening to you.
Right.
And you don't always have people there helping you either. It's almost like, when the money is gone, like Tommy would always say, when the money's gone, so are your fake friends.
Yes.
Nobody will do anything for you unless you pay them. And if you have no money, nobody can represent you. And unfortunately, ESPN ran again with Tommy's mugshot when he came out of jail. I don't know if you can see that.
Yep, seen it many times. Yep.
You've seen that many times. That's a mugshot from jail. That's not a mugshot of somebody that's dying of AIDS. It's unfortunate the way the media treated Tommy, and they treated him like that from 1996 onwards, that he got sick and tired of it. But I will tell you something, that exactly after a year, Tommy's wound healed, right?
Yep.
And if you had bad immune system, that would never have happened.
Right.
But his wound actually healed. And but that's the real cause of his septic shock and septicemia. It was too late. Antibiotics would not cure the septic shock and septicemia, and people do die of septic shock and septicemia. So
I see. I do. I see it all the time in the nursing home. I do. And there's got to be something to be said for for that gauze being in there over time. Yes, a lot of it was pulled out, but you never know how much of that actually broke off and actually ended up in his system too. You know what I mean?
Fused.
Yeah, or fused to different stuff inside of them. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a horrible situation. Nobody reported on it. Everybody wanted to brush it under the carpet. Everybody still had the narrative of Tommy had HIV on February 10th, 1996, died of AIDS on September 1, 2013. And I'm going, wait for the postmortem, right? And then the postmortem came 17 days later after the media frenzy. And I'm sitting there with the postmortem after a phone call from the infectious disease physician saying negative for HIV. And then I'm going through a 10-year lawsuit where everybody's saying, well, we didn't diagnose him. He violated a rule. And then I'm saying, but that rule didn't exist. And it's become a very interesting 11 years of stuff that Tommy didn't even know, right?
Yeah. I'm just amazed at the fact that, I mean, I'm not a doctor and I'm not a nurse like my dad is, but looking at those photos that you took after the chest issue, you could clearly tell his chest was bulging and that there was something behind it. Like, It doesn't take a medical professional to see that.
Right. That's right. And that's exactly it. It does not take a medical professional, to see that there's still something stuffed in his chest.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't have spotted that little piece of thread sticking out of his chest, he probably would have died. I don't know how long it takes to die of septic shock. It doesn't take very long. But yeah, they would never have pulled that out there and then.
And now you spent well. Another interesting thing is that you are not, Tommy's first wife, and I haven't heard of any of his past wives have contracted HIV or have been sick either. Correct?
Well, I don't speak for them. You would have to look at the deposition testimony,
right,
that confirms what you just said. But, when you're talking about other people's personal health information, as you well know,
sure,
that's up to them to discuss.
Right. But it does seem like if any of his ex-wives had passed away from HIV, that would have certainly been something that would have certainly
ESPN 30/30 would have had that.
It would have certainly pushed. It would certainly have been easier to push the narrative. Definitely.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously spending the last couple of years, you being Tommy's widow and the last person, who was in a relationship with him. What were his last weeks, months, days like? What was, obviously this is a lot to compartmentalize. I mean, how did he handle this, mentally? I mean, being sick, being robbed of his career, being robbed of all these opportunities. I mean, in what frame of mind was he in?
Yeah. That is a good question, because I met Tommy in the last 5 to 6 years of his life. Right. I was actually in Las Vegas in 1996, working in Vegas at the time when he got kicked out of boxing. I happened to have a large tour company, and I was dealing with tourists coming in. So I unofficially met him and got to know of him. But it wasn't until 2009 that he and I met. It wasn't until 2011 that we married. And during the time that we spent together, the very first time I met him, he was incredibly depressed and didn't want to look at any boxing, did not want to talk about boxing, and didn't really want to go to the gym. And that was hard for him and hard for me to see. And slowly and surely, I said to him, you've got to keep going. And the more I listened to his story, the more I found it very strange. Why is he still alive? Right? Why did he not die in 1997? And so slowly he started to go back to the gym, and he worked out every single day. And his frame of mind, like you asked, what was he thinking? He started to think, well, now that I feel so good, maybe I should be doing things like opening my own gym. So we opened his gym, and he started to give back to the community and started to coach tennis. And we got Ernie Shavers there for the opening of the gym. We got Ray Mercer there. So it was nice for him to actually talk about his boxing days. Then we went to the International Boxing Hall of Fame, and he was invited. And again, you've got to remember that, if you no longer can box and you're so-called an HIV person, people don't want to touch you. Right. They don't even want to be 6 feet within distance of you.
You're almost treated like a pariah. Yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to invite you. Nobody wants to touch you. You're a liability. And I think that he found it just nice, to be with me, because it was like, let's just get on with life.
Right.
There's so much that you can still do. And, if you don't even have the test results from 1996, how do you know? Right. And he had never, ever seen those test results from 1996 that I just went through with you. Yeah. Those appeared for the first time in that lawsuit in 2014. So then we got invited to the reopening of the Fifth Street Gym in Miami with Angelo Dundee, right?
Yep.
And Angelo Dundee was there, and Bert Sugar. These are all old names that maybe some viewers don't even know who they are. But Bert Sugar, Angelo Dundee, Muhammad Ali. And Tommy was invited to sit at the round table in the gym there with Muhammad Ali and Bert Sugar, him and Angelo Dundee, all sitting around a white table. Nobody was allowed to take any photographs. Ali's wife did not want that because this was obviously in his late stages of Ali's life.
Yes.
And for respect, nobody took photographs. And what I could see was Tommy sitting there, and Ali's eyes, kind of like your eyes looking at me, Ali's eyes were looking at Tommy's eyes.
Yeah.
And they just stared at each other. They didn't have to talk.
Right.
Okay. They knew what they were saying.
Yeah.
And that was huge for Tommy, right?
Two warriors.
And then,
yeah.
Yeah, a table full of warriors there. You know,
Nothing needs to be said. Yeah.
Nothing needed to be said. That's correct. So that was huge for him. That's something that probably would never have happened to him again, ever. And it was an opportunity that came about. And then we went to the International Boxing Hall of Fame. He was invited there, and we got to sit on the back of the car, you know, that they have on their little street parade.
Oh yes,
And
we actually live. Oh yeah, we actually live right in the backyard of the Boxing Hall of Fame. Yeah, we're in upstate New York. Yep, it's close.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so we flew in for that, and he loved it. You know, all these years that he had spent away from boxing, and now he was actually right in the middle of it. And he was with Kenny Norton there, and Leon Spinks, Ernie Shavers, you know, his group, his era.
Yeah.
And he just he was invited to speak at the International Boxing Hall of Fame, and it made his year to go to that. So after all these years of having been kicked out and being shunned by the fans and society, it was now starting, you know, to come back into him that, you know, maybe people do remember me. And then somebody introduced us to Facebook, and that kind of opened up his world again. And he would actually cry when people remembered him. And he would look at me and he'd go, you know, they remember me. And it was his whole life. You know, I have his whole career here. You know, when you get kicked out of something that you've done all your life, you have to fill a void. And obviously the way he filled it was through drugs and drink. Okay.
Yeah.
But for those that don't know, and a lot of people don't know his real career, but at the age of 7 years, he started training himself on his front porch. And his amateur career was 290 and 21.
Crazy.
And out of that, 263 were knockouts, right? Then he retired from amateur boxing, and he went into tough men contests at the age of 13.
13, he's beating up grown men. Yeah.
Beating up grown men. And his record there was 50-1. And in fact, that one person that he lost to did approach us on Facebook when Tommy was alive. And Tommy was like, oh, no, he's going to sue me because I wasn't even 21.
Yeah.
But so his Toughman record was 50-1. And then he retired from Toughman at 18. And between the months of March and October, when he was 18, he won the Kansas City Golden Gloves. He won the Western Olympic Trials. He won the PAL Championships in Florida, and he lost a split decision to that merciless Ray Mercer, right?
Yes.
And then at the age of 19, on November 10th, 1988, he turned pro. And his final record was 51-3-1 when you add stuff that BoxRec don't add.
Right.
And 44 knockouts, and he got 2 belts, the WBO belt, 93, the IBF in 95. So to get all that taken away from him, right, he had to fill a void, and he turned to drugs, he turned to drink. And something, unfortunately, that a lot of people out there in the world don't know is that in the last 5 years of his life, he did drug rehab, and he absolutely loved his negative for all the drugs that he was taking, cocaine, meth, everything, oxycodone, were negative results. And like I've said in many podcasts, he would make a photocopy for the fridge, he'd make a photocopy by the bed, he'd put a copy in the car, he placed a copy on Facebook, everywhere, because it was huge for him. That was probably the biggest fight of his life. He considered that being
big victory, big victory. Yeah.
Big victory. And he would say, if I can do it, so can you.
Yeah.
So if there's anybody listening out there that thinks that it's cool to be on drugs, it's not.
Yeah.
And Tommy found that out. And it wasn't the first time he tried to do rehab. Unfortunately, he was still surrounded by friends that gave him drugs. And anybody that's being given drugs, they're not your friends.
Yeah.
Because there's more to life than just drugs. So, yeah.
And you did drop some pretty impressive statistics there, and I can take it even one step further. And we've been on here before and been very vocal about people who maybe aren't in the Boxing Hall of Fame but should be. And I would make a strong case that Tommy Morrison does belong in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. But BoxRec, yes, had the numbers a little bit different. But even BoxRec had 48 3-1, 42 knockouts. You've got obviously the couple of fights of when he made his comeback in 2006, 2007, which both resulted in knockouts. But I mean, victories over Joe Hip, James Quick Tillis, Pinklin Thomas, Carl the Truth Williams, Razor Ruddock, and of course winning the title over George Foreman. Those are all monumental Hall of Fame type victories right there. So I'm saying it on this podcast.
Brophy, what are you doing?
Yeah, Ed Brophy and the panel at the International Boxing Hall of Fame should take notice that he is somebody who certainly posthumously ought to be in the Boxing Hall of Fame, in my opinion.
Yes, yes. And I totally agree with you. Also, what came out, and I know Ed Brophy, I actually sent some of Tommy's stuff to the museum for him to put out there. Tommy really liked Ed Brophy, and unfortunately, I've heard through the grapevine that Tommy will never be inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame because of HIV.
So it's this stigma is going to follow him around forever.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. So perhaps the documentary "I Am Tommy Morrison" is going to clear that up, and perhaps people will start listening to the facts and the truth, and they will induct him. But the WBN, World Boxing News, recently came out with something just to add more to the statistics, so that you can fight for Tommy to be inducted. On July 8th, 2024, the World Boxing News brought out the top 10 fastest heavyweight knockout ratios. And number 1 was Shannon Briggs. Number 2 was Deontay Wilder. Number 3 was Tommy Morrison. Number 4 was Frank Bruno. Number 5 was Mike Tyson. Number 6, Lamont Brewster. Number 7, Corey Sanders. Number 8, Herbie Hyde. Number 9, David Hay. And number 10, George Foreman. So that came out in July of 2024, which is pretty cool.
That's pretty telling. And did Tommy
maybe we need to have an International Boxing Hall of Fame box off, me and Ed Brophy, for Tommy Morrison to go into the Hall of Fame.
There you go. You're going to get off the couch for that? You sure?
Yeah.
You're sure you want to represent Tommy Morrison getting into the Hall of Fame? I don't know. You better do a few sit-ups and a few push-ups.
Hey, man, Ed Brophy's about 50 years older than me, so I think I got a chance.
That's true. And I don't know. And of course, we've made jokes about Ed Brophy before, but I don't think it's entirely Ed Brophy's decision. I do believe that there's a board. Yeah, I do believe there's a committee, and I've also learned that it's boxing sports writers as well. You know what I mean?
Okay, exactly, Mark. And you made a good point there. It's the sports writers, and guess who the sports writers are? are the ones that write about Tommy
Right.
having been diagnosed with HIV in February of 1996.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's like a vicious circle, because they'll send out all the papers for people to vote on, right? And they will send it out to boxing writers, which is a shame. Yeah.
It's almost like being ostracized. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a shame because, you know, it seems like it's the least boxing could do after stripping this man of his career. You know, I mean, it would be the ultimate. Obviously we can't get Tommy back. You know, I mean, we can't undo a lot of the things that happened, you know, throughout the course of all these years or whatever. But it would be a nice ending to the story, though.
But on top of the fact that you've gone and found out the truth. The truth is out there to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And it's really interesting. I know that it's taken a year for us to do this podcast. I looked back at your first message, Mark, and it was September of 2023. And I've been doing podcasts to get it out there. But so many people are fighting for Tommy now. The truth is out there.
Right.
And so many people are doing their own podcasts. They're spreading their own news out there.
Well, I realized what you were doing, Trisha. You were saving the best for last. It's okay to admit it.
Yeah.
We've known for a long time we're the best boxing podcast out there. And by the way, we're the only father-son boxing podcast out there as well.
Okay, where is the couch, though?
What we're saying is you can be rest assured we're on it.
We're off it, right?
Well, yeah. It's interesting that you brought up going to that at the beginning of the interview. It's interesting you brought up going to see the movie The Fighter with Tommy, because that's actually what inspired this. Because there is a scene in there, and you might remember this early on when Mickey Ward ends up fighting a guy as like he was like a last minute replacement, and his brother and his mom kind of pushed him into it. And if you remember right, his brother kept encouraging him, saying, "Don't worry about this guy. He just got off the couch. He just got off the couch." And then remember, Mickey is in the ring saying, "If that guy just got off the couch, I want to get a couch like that," because the guy came in, in fantastic shape. You know what I mean? But they kind of pushed him into the fight and kind of told him, this guy's a last minute replacement. It's nothing to worry about. Keep pushing on and go through with the fight.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have The Fighter to thank actually for the inspiration for the name of our podcast.
Nice.
Yeah,
very good.
Yeah. But yeah, and back here, I do have hanging back here the brochure that you sent me of Tommy's gym.
Good.
Yep.
Good.
Yeah. I remember there was something else that you had on there, man, that I missed out on though, man. The people were bidding on. You had a nice poster or something of Tommy Morrison that was but I imagine that memorabilia goes quick. Everybody seems to want a piece of that.
Actually, interesting story. At the International Boxing Hall of Fame, I was a child. And I was in line to meet George Foreman and get something signed. And there was a fella in front of me who had a big, beautiful poster of Tommy Morrison and George Foreman. And Tommy had signed this poster.
Yeah.
And the guy wanted George's signature with it. And George just threw a big line through it.
But that's because he got pissed. That's because he got pissed off because the guy made some kind of a comment, man. Because I don't know in that poster, I don't know if George was getting hit by a good shot or well, obviously Tommy went on to win that fight as well. But the guy had something sarcastic to say, and I think out of spite, George just kind of gave him a very crappy autograph on there.
He
ruined the poster.
Yeah, not very befitting. Not very fitting. And as he said, it did already have Tommy's signature on it, so it would have been nice. It really would have completed it nicely to have them both on there. I mean, and it probably would have been worth quite a bit too.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
It was really beautiful.
Yeah. I have all the memorabilia that Tommy had, and I've not sold any of the specific ones that you're talking about, but I have one that Tommy has signed and that I need George's signature on as well.
Yeah.
But I think maybe the poster that you were thinking of, there was Ray Mercer. And then the other one was Joe Hip.
Yeah.
And Joe Hip was kind enough to sign the one Tommy had signed. And then I made exact copies for people so that they would have both the signatures.
Yeah.
And all the profits of that went to Joe. So
I'm curious. I'm curious. I'm glad you brought the Ray Mercer fight up. You know, as a side note, did Tommy ever mention if he was happy with that fight? Obviously, he lost the fight, man. But that stoppage seemed an awful bit late. It seemed like he took more shots than he needed to take in that corner.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, when we opened up the TCB gym in November 2010, we invited Ray Mercer to come along and be there at the opening.
Yep.
So we drive up to Wichita Airport, and I had a yellow Volkswagen Beetle in those days. So I'm driving, and Tommy's sitting next to me, 210 heavyweight, boxer. Gets out of the car and then goes and meets Ray Mercer as he comes through the airport. And you've got these two guys that have been fighting in the ring, hugging each other, saying hello. And then they both pile into my Volkswagen Beetle. And then we go off for dinner. And then they start to talk about the fight.
Yeah.
And Tommy's like, hey, you could have killed me. I could have been, sent out in a pine box, and that ref. And then Ray Mercer was saying, well, you were earning more money than I was. And it was hilarious watching them. And in fact, I've got a photograph of the two of them talking.
Yeah.
But they were laughing and giggling as well at the same time. It was so nice to see. And when we went to that International Boxing Hall of Fame, we actually sat next to somebody who was a friend of Ref Perez of that fight. And he said that Ref Perez had admitted to him that he had frozen, that there was just so much power coming out of Ray onto Tommy that he froze. He was too scared to pull Ray Mercer off him.
Yeah.
And, it's one of the most brutal knockouts in the history of boxing. I actually have an MRI of Tommy's skull, right, which shows just the damage that was done around the eye socket. And, people often would laugh why he wore dark glasses. It's because his eye wouldn't close completely because of what happened to his eye socket. You see the way Ray really punches at him and gets his eye.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tommy made me watch that fight, and he fell asleep during the fight. And I turned around and I said, I can't believe you're making me watch this fight. And he just looked at me, he said, I know how it ends. And then he just went back to sleep again. So, but he definitely took some punches, but just in his true fashion, he gets up and goes and fights again.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's what these guys do. And like, we always put them up on a pedestal on this show, man. You know what I mean? Anybody that climbs between those ropes, like, we hate that term when you hear people say, regardless of record, you hear people say, this guy's a bum, that guy's a bum. And nobody that steps between those ropes is a bum. They really are sacrificing their life for our entertainment. So.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And I don't know if you read all my posts on Facebook, but every time somebody says, oh, he was a bum, right? I fight. I spar with them.
I've defended him many times in your post as well. Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah. I have.
Yeah. Because and I actually have one photograph of Tommy where he's wearing a sweatshirt that says bum on it, right? and he had me respond once on Facebook saying, okay, I'm your bum, okay, here's a picture of me as a bum.
I don't know a lot of guys that could have ate that left hook though. So I don't think there's a lot of guys walking the earth. And
all those guys calling him a bum on the Facebook post wouldn't last 30 seconds with him.
Yeah, they're all key. Yeah, a lot of keyboard warriors and a lot of armchair, boxing experts out there. And that's easy to say from the other side of a computer screen or a cell phone. I mean. Oh
yeah, and when he was alive, nobody said that to him, to his face.
I would say he was pretty avoided. Yeah, I would say he was pretty avoided, and it does stink for the fact that and I hate to bring race into it or whatever, but I think a lot of people really did rally around him because unfortunately we haven't seen a lot of heavyweight champions who have been strictly white Americans. I mean, we see a lot of guys from overseas. The Klitschko brothers are European, even Tyson Fury is British or whatever, but there've been very few guys, who are actually American heavyweights.
Yeah, Yeah, and one thing that he disliked was being dubbed the Great White Hope. He
Yeah, I'm sure
hated
you
that.
heard that a few times. Yeah.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
hated that. Plus, you know, he has a lot of other ethnical in his background.
Yeah.
He is part Native American Indian. So he said, you know, it just doesn't make sense to call me the Great White Hope. I'm not the Great White Hope.
Yeah. But what's awesome is, though, that he went by the nickname the Duke because there actually is a lineage in there of a relation to John Wayne.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and he wanted to actually solidify that relationship by doing one of those genealogy tests.
Yeah.
And we didn't get time to do that. There's still time to do that, you know, for me to get it done.
Yeah.
But yeah, supposedly John Wayne was Tommy's great grand. Tommy was the great grand nephew of John Wayne, who was Marion Morrison. That was
Yeah.
his real name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to promote the documentary a little bit, you know, I mean, when can we expect it?
It's going to be out in 2025.
Okay.
And the filming is going great. We've got some amazing people in there. And I think everybody's really going to like it.
And where will this be
And
featured?
above all, Tommy's going to like it too, because basically he wrote the whole script for his movie. And it'll be based on what Tommy lived and how he lived and breathed his own life.
And where will people be able to watch this? Where will it be available?
Everywhere in the world.
Okay. Okay. So people could go, you know, so people can actually go and purchase it like a DVD, or will there be websites streaming it?
You know, one thing that Tommy always said to me was, when we bring out my documentary, like I said, I want the whole truth, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
And he said, and I don't want anybody to pay to see it.
Oh, that's great. Oh, okay.
Wow.
So I imagine it'll be on a lot of streaming platforms, and it'll be like available out there on the YouTubes of the world, maybe the Netflix of the world.
We'll see.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you know what? You know, thank God that he has somebody like you advocating for him. Benji's, I don't think we've ever had a guest on here who comes off. I mean, you're literally a forensic expert. I mean, the amount of material and research that you've done, you know, on behalf of Tommy is absolutely astounding.
Incredible.
Yeah, I looked at all the people that you've had on your show, and I'm thinking, am I the only person that's not a boxer? My sport was tennis.
Yeah.
And so I felt I should say to you that my ring is outside, as Tommy would say in Rocky
Yes.
V.
Yeah.
But you're right. You know, I had to learn about the sweet science.
Yeah.
I had to learn about the real science. And I had to learn about the boxing laws, the legislative laws that were
Right.
passed or that were not passed. I had to learn how to file documents in court, not only in federal court, but the Ninth Circuit and the US Supreme Court. And the defendants in the case all confessed under oath that they never diagnosed Tommy with HIV and had no proof of a diagnosis of HIV in 1996.
I think people are going to listen to this and they're going to be bowled over. And I think interviews like this, you know, coupled with the documentary, I think there's going to be just a real, you know, a real groundswell. At least I hope so. You know, of support for Tommy. I really hope that's the outcome of all of this.
Yeah, it is, and it's already happening.
Yeah.
Okay. It's already happening. People are not afraid to interview me, right? Otherwise,
Right.
I wouldn't be on your show.
Right. Right.
And people are genuinely interested. And quite honestly, you know, the guys out there have confessed there was never a diagnosis.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've only got the truth in front of you now, and no hysteria.
I'm sick with the medical community.
Yeah, I am too. I have to work in it, and I'm sick with it. You know, it just goes to show you that it is flawed. There is a lot of bureaucracy. There is a lot of shenanigans going on, for lack of a better word. You know what I mean? I can't believe that something like this in our country could even possibly happen. I'm speechless. I can't believe that that a man's livelihood and career can be ripped away from him with just a few false medical claims. It just seems like we could be doing a lot better.
I think what we need to remember is if anybody's listening out there, is if you are not a physician, if you have never drawn blood, put it under a microscope, or done any medical education, please don't tell somebody they have the deadliest virus in the world.
Yeah.
And that they're going to die before they get to their car.
Yeah.
Because you have no right to do that. And that's what happened to Tommy on February 10th, 1996. He was told in a hotel room, sitting at the end of a bed by someone that was under contract with Don King, and was told that he had HIV and they had to get him out of town quick. And this person was not a physician, had no lab report, had no test results in front of him. And, you know, I wouldn't want their conscience at all.
I absolutely. And by the way, you know, not to spoil the ending if people haven't seen Rocky V, but Tommy Gunn does actually lose, but everybody loses to Sylvester Stallone in those movies. So that's my spoiler alert.
But wait, you know, it depends on which version you see. There's also that other version out there where Tommy Gunn wins, right?
Yeah. I kind of like that one a little bit more. I mean, Rocky up to that point had done enough winning already. It's enough with the winning, right?
Yeah.
It would have been all right if you. It would have been all right if you would have went outside of a bar and lost a street fight, you know. But
yeah,
how did Sylvester Stallone, though? Before I let you go, did he ever talk about how Sylvester Stallone discovered him, man? I mean, obviously he was a very good-looking guy, you know. I mean, in the prime of his career at that time, you know, he certainly had you know, matinee good looks. You know, he pulled off the part, like I said earlier, without having any acting background. But you know, how did Sylvester Stallone had a knack for, you know, he found the Mr. T's of the world, he found the Dolph Lundgrens of the world. How did he happen upon Tommy? I mean,
well, actually, we have Frank Stallone to thank for Tommy being Tommy in Rocky V, and Tommy's co-manager was Bill Caton, and it was Bill Caton that put together all the fight videos for Frank Stallone, and it was Frank Stallone that pitched it to Sly, that, hey, you know, you've actually got a real boxer who you might be able to teach to act, as opposed to an actor teaching them to box. So that's how it happened. It was actually Frank Stallone that got Tommy the position, and Tommy was forever thankful to Frank for that.
Well, I guess I know what I'm falling asleep to tonight, and I'm going to be watching. It's going to be Rocky V immediately after this interview. Now I've got to see it, Trish. Now I have to see it. Yeah, there's no choice. I mean, you know, I have to. And of course, full disclosure, I've probably seen every single Rocky movie at least probably 20 to 30 times over, including Rocky V. But, you know, again, as I said earlier, wasn't always the critics' favorite, but I loved it.
Yeah. And I have never seen any of the other Rockies or Creed movies.
Yeah.
No, I know, I don't. Yeah.
Listen, Trish, I'm so happy we finally got a chance to do this after a year's worth of going back and forth and talking. I'm glad we got a chance to do this. Easily, you're going to win the award for most prepared guest on here ever. No, and I don't think anyone's ever going to top that. Yeah, I mean, you had paperwork and documents. So, but again, in all seriousness, it's so great that you've advocated for Tommy like this. And you know, I hope I hope the outcome is, as I said, you know, I mean, a groundswell of support. I hope that the interviews like this and the documentary, I hope maybe we can chisel away at this and we can see him posthumously honored the way he should be in the International Boxing Hall of Fame, getting the accolades and the recognition that he deserves for an amazing career and a good part of his career that was stripped away from him.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I really appreciate your time, guys, for being on your podcast.
Yeah.
It really does help. The word gets out there, and we need to do this for Tommy. We really do.
Really appreciate it, Trish. It's been a real pleasure getting the chance to talk to you.
My pleasure too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and definitely keep in touch. We'd love to have you back again, especially, you know, after the documentary comes out. We'll get back on and talk again.
Yeah, sounds good. We'll get the producer on with you guys so that you can get more information on that later on.
We would love that. Yeah, we would love that. Appreciate you, Trish. Thank you so much, honey. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, guys.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, I am going to say it, man. And maybe we said it on here before about people, man, but I don't know. As I look over the resume, man, I think the Duke belongs in the Hall of Fame too.
I mean, hey, man, we've gone on record as to call out Ed Brophy.
Well, we always make Ed Brophy the scapegoat, but he's really not the scapegoat. I know that we've made him, you know, he kind of takes the brunt of all the bad decisions by the International Boxing Hall of Fame, but it really is boxing sports writers, though, man. You know, who actually put people in. You know, I think we've made a running joke of it about Ed Brophy single-handedly putting these people into the Boxing Hall of Fame, and he doesn't.
Yeah,
you know. So I guess somewhat apologies to Ed Brophy if he ever catches any of these episodes. But although I do think he could probably have a little bit of influence maybe on sports writers, or maybe, you know, some influence of getting Tommy even on the ballots. Because, you know, I mean, to hear that he is almost ostracized and not even allowed or to be considered for the Boxing Hall of Fame is crazy.
Considering that, like, over, like, pretty much a decade ago, this was found out to be not true.
Yeah, and I mean, victories over Donovan Razor Ruddock, Carl the Truth Williams, the amazing Pinklin Thomas, James Quick Tillis, Joe Hipp winning the WBO heavyweight title over the great George Foreman. I mean, you know, she's got the updated record of the couple of fights that he had in 2006, 2007, when a couple states or one state, you know, lifted the ban on him, and he was able to eke out a couple more fights. But officially, BoxRec has him at 48-3-1 with 42 of those 48 wins coming by knockout. So that's impressive.
She says 55-3-1.
51, I think, 3-1, right?
Did she say 51? I thought she said 55.
Something like that. She had him up. It was definitely up over 50. And of course, you know, a renowned, legendary left hook that was feared by so many people. Arguably, I don't know if I did a 3-punch combo on this. I may have, and if I did do the boxing left hooks, and I'm pretty sure that I did. That he was certainly like one of the three, if not the top one. I don't know if he was the top one or not. You
do just gotta say though, with all the shit that goes around about Tommy and the HIV and this and that, I mean, you see a woman who's an advanced age, looks terrific,
phenomenal, yeah,
and obviously doesn't have HIV.
Right. And she's not, and as I alluded to, and you know, and rightfully so, she didn't want to speak on their behalf, but he also had wives previous to her who I think it would be public knowledge if they had passed away. Somebody would have got wind of that story and ran with it, as I said, to push the narrative of see, he did have AIDS. Look, he's got ex-wives dying of AIDS. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you know, and such is not the case. And I don't know where in the world right now these women are, but I'm pretty sure that, you know, had they fallen under bad circumstances and or passed away, you know, from this hideous disease, I'm pretty sure that somebody would have gotten wind of it, and it would have been made to be news. It would have popped up on our Google feed, or it would have popped up somewhere. Hey, look, here's more proof that Tommy Morrison had AIDS. Look, here's a wife that he was married to back, well, you know, way back when.
You know, something I wanted to say to her that I didn't get a chance to, that I feel like is important, is how come Magic Johnson never got ostracized like this over having AIDS?
I know. Yeah. And oh yeah. If anything, man, you know, after he got the diagnosis, he's almost been like more revered and more celebrated.
That's what I'm saying. Like, people are fine with it.
I also wanted to ask her opinion on the audiobook that I have in my library, about Tommy Morrison, and if it had any credibility or not. I've been through it, you know, numerous times. I don't know if it's how authorized it is or whatever, man. But you know, it's you know, it's fodder for another conversation or whatever. But I do have at least what I consider a pretty good audiobook in my library, and I'm not really sure even like what the title of it is. But I meant to ask her about it, and you know, because obviously,
is she from a different country?
Who?
His widow. She had like an accent, like she's from a different country.
Yeah. So I've got this book right here called The Duke, and I've read through it numerous times. It's written by Carlos Acevedo, And it seems very informative, and it seems like it comes from a good place. And of course, I can text her and I can ask her offline her opinions on that book as well. I mean, you know, she still has my very first message when I reached out to her a year ago, and I did say tongue in cheek that she did save the best podcast for last, which I do stand by my remark and truly believe. But I'm glad to have her on. I'm excited that a documentary is coming out. I Am Tommy Morrison will be will be brought out in 2025. And you know, it's so great to hear that Tommy wanted his story told for free. He doesn't want this to be like one of those things where I'm going to charge a cash grab. So I think that speaks volumes. And let me also say, man, that in defense of his 3 losses, they were to Ray Mercer, Michael Bent in '93, which was kind of a surprise because I think it was his second fight after he won the title from George Foreman. I don't know what was going on in that fight because that's a guy that Tommy should have steamrolled over. And then the 3rd loss was in 1995 to a little-known heavyweight by the name of Lennox Lewis. So there's really no shame in, at least 2 out of those 3 names, there's no shame in losing to. Ray Mercer was a seasoned, crafty veteran at the time. I don't know, no disrespect to Michael Bent. He fought a great fight. He did knock Tommy out, but I don't know. Tommy just looked off his game. For people to go back and watch that fight, man, that's not a guy that you would have thought. So, and again, and even Trish spoke about it. Tommy had gone through lots of turmoil in his life, lots of struggles with addiction. I don't want to say that's what happened back in '93 when he loses to Michael Bent. I don't know what was going on in his personal life, but that certainly seems like a fight that if any of them were going to have an asterisk next to it, that would be the one. That's kind of a head scratcher. Like, how does Tommy the Duke Morrison lose to Michael Bent? And if Michael Bent catches wind of this, I certainly mean no disrespect, but I'm pretty sure Vegas odds were in favor of Tommy Morrison.
Hey, man. With that being said,
shout out
TRISHA Harding Morrison for doing everything she did and does for Tommy.
Yeah,
and coming on this show and giving us a great interview and being very, like you said, very well prepared.
Holy shit. I can't believe it, man. The amount of documentation and giving us giving us bringing props out to show us the gauze coming out. Just astounding, man. The amount of passion that you can see, that she puts forth in fighting for her, her man. You got to love that, man. That's that's a woman who's down for you. And, even years after his passing, here we are. We're coming up on September 1st. He passed away 2013. So we're coming up on 11 years now that Tommy Morrison has passed away, and she's still out there fighting the good fight, man. You gotta respect the hell out of that.
And with that being said, like and subscribe, tap in on Facebook, hit the notification bell, because we are bringing you the best boxing conversations in the whole game.
Yeah.
And I will say, shout out Gary Busey, because I can go 15 seconds with anything.
And just to add to that, man, fucking game does recognize game, man, because, there are lots of up-and-coming fighters and or current champions right now who are now reaching out to us that would like to come on the show, man. So the boxing community is starting to, at least the boxing community in the from the inside is starting to recognize what we do, and that certainly feels good. We a big thank you and a shout out to the viewers. The subscriptions keep going up, the views keep going up, a little bit trickling every single day. I think in the last couple days, another 10 subscribers. So people keep on tapping in, man. We couldn't do it without you people out there. I don't think we applaud the audience enough out there. We've got loyal subscribers. We've got brand new ones. We got brand new ones coming on every single day who are getting with the program, man, and realizing that this is amazing boxing content right here. You heard Trish say that she went through our laundry list of past guests and felt like, oh, geez, I'm not a boxer. But we have had non-boxers on here. We've had, we've had authors on here. We've had musical artists on here. Huh?
Lisa McClellan.
Yeah, right. So, it's at our discretion of who we think is going to be an interesting conversation. I knew from seeing past interviews of Trisha's that she was going to bring it, that she was going to get on here and defend Tommy to the hilt, and that she was going to, that she had done her homework, that she had done her research, that she was going to come on very well prepared. I wasn't surprised by any of that, because I am friends with her on Facebook. I do see her posts. It just, I mean, you know, God bless her, man. She's really out there trying to spread the truth, man. And it seems like it was shrouded for a long, long time. So it's good to see it come to the light, man. The truth always prevails out there. Always let that be the lesson here, man. The truth will always set you free. And with that being said, man, thank you again, Trish Morrison. Really appreciate you coming on here and doing our show. And remember, stay tapped, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you want to be a champion, remember, you got to roll with the champs.